Good morning, everybody on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, all of the locations. I am so excited to come to you all one more time for the finale of Brand Like Jesus. It's been an amazing couple of weeks. I know I had some glitches throughout this process, but we're going to let the software do what it does as always. So, as you are logging in, good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm going to get started here in just a few minutes. But today we are talking about the power of parables and how they can enhance your brand so that you turn your looky-loos into brand ambassadors. Going to get started shortly. As always, I'm going to dial in on my phone to make sure everything is up and running. Y'all, we are 1 week away from Christmas, and I am so excited. Obviously, I've got up my tree over here. I've got my main tree in the living room. People are like, wow, Sybil, that's so very home and gardens of you. And I'm like, thanks so much. Um, but it's so funny as I even jump in and good morning, good morning, good morning. I was watching on Netflix the Martha Stewart special, and they were talking about how she was able to put herself at the center of her omni media company. That's actually what she called it. And I thought about everything around how she built this amazing brand around herself and some of the lessons that she learned, that she talked about learning, whether you love Martha or hate her, but just looking at all of her brand evolution and how she tied all of the aspects that made her her together to form one really powerful brand. And as I was watching it, I was like, I did not know Martha worked on Wall Street. I did not know that she studied art design. I didn't know that her father was who taught her how to garden. And the more that I started to hear her story, the more I started to see some of me in her. Now, I don't have a green thumb. Everybody knows I even killed the plastic plants. Everybody knows I already killed the plastic plants, um, but just watching her story evolution, and I thought, well, how can I incorporate those lessons learned today? And if y'all watched the Martha Stewart Netflix special, let me know in the chat, or like y'all go watch it. Okay, it's really good. It's a really great documentary. It talks about her entire career trajectory, even the lawsuit behind the things, how her and Snoop Dogg became a co-partnership brand, and just amazing to watch how she transformed one really great idea into something phenomenal. And that's what I want to talk about today, right? I want to talk about how we can transform one really great idea into a lot of different brand assets and components. And good morning as you all are dialing in, because there's nothing worse than hearing from someone who has not been where you are, or people using references that mean nothing to you. People who have studied a lot of things, but they can't figure out to connect with you. Okay, they're just doing what the pros do. They have like a working knowledge of the thing, but they don't really know what they're talking about. And when we look at the parables that Jesus uses in the Bible, in the scripture, he's talking about the everyday thing, the everyday person experience. And back then it was vineyards and mustard seeds, but today it might be arms and slings and social media. And speaking of arms and slings, I don't have a parable for this, but I do have a story around this. And it all started with um, the first time I hurt my arm, right? So I think we can all relate to having broken a limb if we've lived this long, or maybe we've had a child that broke a limb and we remember all the things. But this particular sling, aka Slenderella, exists because I was transporting my harp. For those of you all who follow me any length of time, sometimes I play the harp, but I was transporting my harp, and harps weigh about 90 pounds. I weigh a little bit more than my harp does, and it slipped off its cart, and it caught me right here in my left shoulder. And I did that thing that we all do because we don't have time to slow down or rush or keep still. I kept on performing. I kept on gigging. I did my last performance literally with one of the sticky hot pads across my shoulder. And as a result, I am officially on the injured list until further notice. And I thought about this experience and I said, well, while everyone does not play the harp, we can all remember a time when we held on to something longer than we should have, when we've injured ourselves and we don't take time to heal. And so we keep re injuring ourselves. And that's pretty much what happened here. I fooled around, moved the harp, didn't care well for myself afterward. And now I'm suffering the consequences of letting this thing linger way too long. And so I wanted to talk about that because, again, most of my audience don't play the harp, except for I did meet one harpist. But there are other people in my audience who are fellow musicians who understand the rigor that it is when you are a musician, who understand what it is to have to gig different places to build your income in your portfolio. And so if that's you and you are here this morning, I would love to hear, like, what instruments do you all play? Again, mine is the harp. That's instrument one of 8 that I play. But if you understand what it is to be a musician and you don't know what it is to sit down either, definitely let me know in the chats. But I say all that to say, one of the very first posts that turned someone who was a passerby into someone who messaged me was because my story about being a musician resonated with them. It had nothing to do with the fact that I am a paid speaker. It had nothing to do with the fact that I do consulting. And it had everything to do with the fact that we had this one shared experience in common, which is we have both been lifelong musicians, and we started talking about that. Another time I had a post that resonated with someone is when I posted about, the woes of being an economics teacher. And while everyone on this call may not be a teacher or former educator, she was like, yes, I remember my economics teacher. I'm sure you're amazing. And I'm like, thanks. Yes. So anytime we have a story that is personally ours, I want us to start thinking about it as an opportunity to share a piece of our onion layer in a way that's going to resonate with our audiences. And so often we want to try and game the algorithm, right? Or maybe you've been told, just go be authentic. Well, I want to suggest today that while authenticity is great and there is a place for that, what you really want is resonance. What you really want is to radiate a message that's so powerful, people have no choice but to be drawn into you. What you want is a message that is so meaningful that the wrong people are going to step away from you. And so often we look at Jesus's journey, and I'm going to grab my Bible with my one good arm here, and we think that Jesus was for everyone, but we know that's not true. Like, we know Jesus came to save the world and overcome and all of that, but really, when Jesus was speaking in parables, he very clearly said that there will be people who will through seeing, but they do not see. They will hear, but they won't understand. And so anytime you get ready to tell your story, to share your story, to create these parables that are going to be uniquely yours, I want you to keep that in mind. There are going to be people who see you, but don't really see you. And that is okay. There are going to be people that hear you, but do not understand what they're saying, but do not understand what you're saying. And that's okay too. There are going to be people who intentionally look for ways to misunderstand you so that they can find fault in your message. And that's one of those things that is really challenging for us as women in business, is we want to get up on the stage, we want to do all the things, we want to serve all the people, and realizing that there might be that one person in the audience that doesn't like us. And there's actually a psychology to that. And if y'all are interested in the psychology of building audiences, let me know. I can drop it in the chat. But it literally said it takes one negative comment to lower our esteem. One negative comment. So that means every time we hear one negative piece of feedback, we need anywhere from 7 to 10 affirmations just to get us back to base level. This is why, and I'm deviating a little bit, but I will go with where the spirit leads me. This is why it's so important for you to collect testimonials. It's for those moments when someone gives you that one bad review, that you've got 7 to 10 more affirmations that you are where you're supposed to be, you are where you belong, and it is okay for you to keep pressing forward. Regularly, I get messages in my inbox that says, hey, Sybil, this is great and all that you want to brand like Jesus. I'm not a believer. I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe in your God. I'm, in the laundry list. You know what? Thank you for letting me know. I don't get combative. I don't get offensive. Thank you for letting me know. I'll remove you from my list. And having that level of okayness with sharing my story has made it more powerful for the people who really want to connect with me than any other marketing beat the algorithm strategy than I could ever think of. It is about leaning in and knowing that you are the best qualified person to talk about you. And because you are talking about you and your life experiences, that means that there is a high probability that those life experiences that you are sharing belong to other people as well. I remember when I first started creating content, and I don't know if this is y'all's testimony, but let me know in the chats. Um, it would literally take me hours to write one piece of content that was only going to be seen for about 3 seconds. Hours on end trying to draft the perfectly written number of characters, letters, length, short form, long form, put a video up, all of the things. And that content would flop every single time. And I didn't understand why until I looked to what the scripture was saying. I looked to understand that when I start talking about my message and people don't hear or understand it, it's because it's not for them. And when I got to that level of realization, my message changed, it evolved. And now I regularly get up on stages, getting paid to speak, and I regularly now help other women figure out what their stories are. And it comes from delivering the most simple content possible, the most uncomplicated message that you can talk about. That is the thing. That's the thing you want to talk about a parable. Okay. For those of you who are all unfamiliar with me, because I did not introduce myself at all, my name is Sybil. I am a paid keynote speaker, and I also consult for other women who are interested in getting on stage or building their own stages, because speaking should be a revenue stream for you in your business. There's no reason, if you are on this call today, that you are not earning at least 6 figures, getting paid to do what everyone does, which is speak. And I'm going to tell you all about my first keynote because I believed in parables long ago. Parable just means a really great story. And one of the first keynotes that I did was at a college, at a university up in New York. And I got up on stage with my tried and true speech. I had been working through it. I had been giving like test series of it before I got up on the main stage. And it didn't quite resonate with the audience. What had happened is I used my normal stories, but I left my audience behind because I was so tied to what I wanted to say that I didn't care if they didn't need to hear it. And my story was talking about self-care. The challenge with my self-care story wasn't that I was talking about self-care. It was because the self-care that I was practicing today did not look like the self-care that college students are practicing right now. Self-care for me today looks like I go and take a long staycation or vacation. Self-care in college looked like getting my hair and nails done. And I forgot to use my hair and nails story. And I leaned into that time I went to Europe. And it's not like I said I went backpacking through Europe. I was talking about, and I stayed at this 4-star resort, and it fell flat, and it fell flat fast. And I had to pick it up. And what I learned from that is, you can have the best story ever, but if it does not align, if it does not resonate, if it does not meet your audience's needs and expectations, it does not matter how good a storyteller or orator you are. Your audience won't care about you. And once I realized that my European vacation was not what they needed to hear, I shifted gears really quickly, which today is not the day to talk about improv, but I shifted and I started talking about an experience that I had in high school running track, because I knew that if they were in college, everybody had at least a high school experience. So I instantly found a better shared experience that turned into a story that resonated with my audience. So when you're looking at the content that you're developing for your social media, for your newsletter, for your blogs, etc., I want you to think about the stage of life your audience is in currently, and the transformation that only you can provide them once they are done hearing from you. You see, it's really hard, and I don't know if I'm just talking to me, might be talking to y'all too, but it's really hard to know we're really good at things in our business. And it's also really difficult to admit when things that we are doing are not a good fit, when they are not serving us well. We start coveting the success of others. We're saying, well, that story worked for Bob, or this storyline over here worked for this big name guru over here that's got, 100,000 followers. Why isn't it working for me? And at even the bottom of our process, we choose what I would call the most inappropriate times. They'll dig our heels in deeper because it's what we've always done. Because we can't figure out how to manage the change internally so that our clients, our would-be clients, the people who need us most, can see those parts of us that they need to hear from. And we lean into our same talk track. Like I said, I've been known to do this. We lean into, well, these are the people I've only ever talked to. Why do I need to talk to somebody else? It's because that somebody else might be a more ideal fit. I leaned into, when I first started speaking, talking at colleges and universities, because that's what I was most comfortable with. I was most comfortable being a teacher because I had been an educator for most of my life. I'm still a college professor. And so I started doing educational conferences. And it was like the most ill-fitting message I had ever delivered. And then I started doing women's conferences. And then I started incorporating music into my keynote. And now I offer, when my arm is not in a sling, keynoting with my harp. If I had not gone through those rocky passages, those pathways of delivering the right speech to the wrong audience or the wrong speech to the right audience, I would not be able to present this information to you all today. You see, parables, what I've learned, and the storytelling that I now get to do, it's not powerful because I'm delivering this amazingly complex idea. It's because I figured out how to be so simple that my nieces and nephews can hear the message and get something from it. One best practice that I love is I share my messages when I'm practicing, when I'm writing new content. I turn it over to my 6-year-old niece and I say, hey, do you find this funny? And she might giggle a little bit in her 6-year-old mind, but then that's when I know I've got a message that makes sense, that's going to translate, because ultimately my niece is my audience. She just doesn't know it yet. So ask yourself, who can you share your stories with before you start writing that next post, before you send out that next newsletter? Who can you share that message with to see, does this thing resonate before I send it out into the masses? Who can help me overcome the challenge of complexity and help me dial it back to something really, really simple? Who can help me change my logic about how I'm problem solving, or the problems that I think I'm solving, so that when I get ready to talk, when I get ready to draft that next piece of content, it's already been tested? How can I become the woman that sees what my audience needs to see the most? I literally started praying this prayer because, like I said, you all, when doing this work, realized that I was leaving God out of so much of my message. But I started saying, hey, God, help me to handle my message with care so that it can help my audience. And so one of my favorite parables in the Bible is the one with the talents, because this is one that I've leaned into a lot, about burying talents. And we all know Matthew 25:14. The owner of the business gives talents, 1, 2, and 10, I believe, or 1, 2, and 5, to his worker. And he's like, okay, I'm leaving. Here are your talents. Go do something with them. And there's this one servant who he calls wicked, who buries the talent. He's like, I was too afraid to spend it. And I think that that's where a lot of women in business are right now. We want to bury that talent because we don't think it's valuable enough. It's not as valuable as the other talents that other people have. And so we want to bury this thing and we're going to try and go over here. And what I learned is the solution isn't to bury the talent. It's to figure out how to use it, even if it looks small, even if it looks minute, even if it looks like it's not enough. That's the talent that we should then lean into. As soon as you stop dismissing your natural born talents, you'll start creating content that everyone wants to talk about, because chances are that talent that you're overlooking or minimizing, or that's been historically put down, that's the talent people need to see from you. I took time off from speaking this year, and it wasn't that I didn't want to speak. It was that I had a keynote that did not go well. And it left me feeling like a shell of myself. And I said, Sybil, you cannot take the speech on another stage. You cannot ruin your brand by putting this speech on another stage until you figure out what went wrong. And there were so many things that went wrong in that speech. I don't have time to tell you, but if y'all want to know, just message me, Sybil, what did you do wrong? I give you the list of everything that went wrong. But it was also a learning experience. And what happened is not only did I stop speaking, but I realized it was affecting the content that I was creating because I wasn't functioning in that talent that I'm so great at that comes to me with such ease. And so I started forcing content out again. Up until I started the series, I started forcing content out again because I didn't know what else to do with myself. And so if that is you and you're finding yourself even at the end of this year just trying to get through these last couple of weeks of writing content, just know that sometimes it's okay to take that break. I literally took a break from the stage because I did not want to mess up the things. I didn't want it to be messy. I didn't want to live in that mess. I didn't know how to change or what to change or who to change the things for. And in short, I was unintentionally spamming my audiences and I didn't even know. I was spamming my newsletter. I was throwing everything inside my newsletter, hoping that something stuck. I was throwing up social media posts, hoping that somebody would click something and that it wouldn't just fall flat. It's because I was trying to prove that I was something when I was on stage. This is what I realized, right? Like I came to that realization. I was trying to talk to too many people while I was on stages. I was trying to prove, I was continually trying to prove what I was and why I belonged on that stage and why I belonged to get paid to speak. It was all ego. And when I put all of that aside and I revamped my media content, I said, okay, Sybil, how can you check all of that at the door and start just talking to your audience of one again? And it had nothing to do with my buyer persona. And yes, you still have a buyer persona. Yes. How can I talk to the 7-year-old me, to that 10-year-old me that looks just like the person on the other side of the camera? How can I move from what they want to what they will? How can I stop procrastinating and start fixing this thing so that I can start stepping in purpose, so that I can help other people who are trying to step in their purpose as well? And when I stopped making my message about me and more about others, that is when I started getting traction in my content again. I remember one post that I wrote and it talked about how I almost suffered a stroke. And then I got my inbox and all of these other women saying, me too. Me too. I almost suffered a stroke when leaving corporate. Me too. I have stress-induced diabetes. Me too. I had a cycle that went on for 6 months and on and on and on. All because I shared that one thing that I thought didn't matter. So today I want you to think about, oh my goodness, here we are again. We are back. I don't know what happens. Lives just drops. Today, I want you to think about that thing that feels like the scariest thing you can share and figure out how to turn it into a story that is meaningful not only to you, but your audience. To give somebody the option to say, yes, this is me. And it feels scary because it puts you in a state of vulnerability that you may not have experienced before, or a state of vulnerability that people say is not okay in the workplace. But if we don't do that, then we're going to continue to fail at writing that copy, of writing that newsletter, of delivering messages when you get on stage, to do the things that are going to connect your audiences in ways that you may not thought of. You see, I would get overwhelmed in writing my copy because I was trying to present the most polished version, perfect version of me. But that's not what people needed to see. They needed to see Sybil in a sling. They needed to see Sybil who dropped her heart. They needed to see the clumsy version of me who can't really iron her clothes that well because she's working through the challenges of moving with one arm. They needed to see that messy, unkept, the hairs in a ponytail today version of me. So I want to ask you, what version of you does your audience need to see that you are overlooking, that you're saying, no, this is unimportant. No, nobody wants to hear about this. What version of you is that? And how can you start writing copy that makes sense? And when you start writing that copy for your audience, I want you to think about these four things. Does it resonate and is it relatable? Does it show your personal transformation? Does it equally captivate and repel? And will it turn a listener into a follower, into someone who takes action? When you look at your parables, when you look at your stories, I want you to go down that list and say, does it meet these four things? If so, it's time for me to post. If it does not, then I want you to hold on to that and think about how you can create something that looks like that. For those of you who enjoy using Chat GPT, maybe you ask Chat GPT, you say, hey, Chat GPT, here's what I'm thinking about. Turn it into something a sixth grader or a seventh grader will want to read. And look at the language that Chat GPT uses and see, are those words boiled down to the most simple word you can find? There are so many synonyms we can use for things. Are those words going to make sense to your audience? They are super educated, but no one feels like reading a dissertation level thing if they can read something really, really fast. They want to be able to consume it quickly. Is it consumption worthy? Is it carefully curated so that it follows the four rules of the parable? And I say this every time, but I'm going to say it again as I wrap up and as we head into the holidays. Are you sold enough on your story so that you can share it effectively and consistently? Are you so studied up on you that no one can challenge the you that you are today? Are you prepared to share your 80% because you know that that 80% is someone else's 20%? Are you prepared to let go of the distractions of social media and, ooh, it's so toxic, and realize that you can frame and reframe and shape the social media experience that you want to see because you're a part of creating something new? And so often we're told there's a lot of noise and it's noisy and there's distractions, and all of that's true. But that means you also have the opportunity to not be a spammer, to not be a distractor, to not be just another voice in a sea of things happening in the platforms that you are on. I want you all to think about this as we close out the year. How can I make sure How can I make sure that as I leave this year behind, I'm also leaving behind the parts of the things that are not working so that I can lean into the things that are working? I got into a pretty spirited debate, and I'm going to wrap up, with a client of mine. And she said, but Sybil, it just feels so small. And I said, it's not small, it's simple. It's two things. It's simple and it's easy. If it does not feel simple and it does not feel easy, it does not belong in your messaging. Okay? The road should be long and narrow. We call it niching down. The Bible calls it long and narrow, right? When you find that one thing you want to talk about, your road should look like it's never ending. It does not cease because you are finding that one thing you want to talk about. And like I said, I'm wrapping up, but this is my for real wrap up as we lean into 2025, because so often we forget to ask people what they think about us and take that feedback for what it is. But I asked a trusted advisor, because I have trusted advisors. I said, what's the one word that when you hear me speak, you think this is Sybil? And she thought about it for a second and she said, it's resonance. And so in 2025, I'm going to be leaning into resonance, because she gave me that word and I checked my internal metrics and all of the things. And I said, ooh, I like that word. Why do I love resonance? Number one, I'm a musician. Resonance as a musician means to vibrate. That means you're in harmony with something. If it's not resonance, it's dissonance. That means something's out of tune. Resonance also means relatable. I fed that word to a couple of clients. I said, how do you feel about resonance? She was like, absolutely. it means you are relatable. You see that me too in you. So resonance is going to be my word that I talk about. But what's your word? What's your word? Go poll your audience. Go ask some friends. Go create that social media post. Ask the audience, ask the people, and then figure out what your one word might be and how you can leverage it into a phenomenal message that is going to connect you to all of the people who need you the most. Y'all, that is me. It is 30 minutes. It is time to have a very Merry Christmas. I will see you in 2025. I pray safe holidays, travels, and all of the well wishes for you all. It's been a pleasure delivering this series, Brand Like Jesus. Like I said, in 2025, we're going to talk about resonance and all of the stages that I'm going to be speaking on because I am back at it. I am so excited. Already getting booked for 2025. And I know it is going to be a great year for me and for you. If you have any questions about getting paid to speak, want to learn more about delivering that TEDx, want to more, just tell me hi, drop me a comment below, shoot me a message in the DM. I look forward to hearing from you. Have a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous day. And I will see you all in the new year. And hopefully without Slingerella.